This is ILLUMENATE, the podcast about men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. Welcome to ILLUMENATE. I'm your host, Chris Tidrick, and I'm here with Nick Gaylord. Nick has spent nearly 3 decades in the pharmaceutical industry, ensuring quality and life-changing medicines. But he's always felt a pull to help people in a deeper, more personal way. Through the Our Dead Dads podcast, he creates space for raw, honest conversations about grief, loss, and healing. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you, Chris. Such a pleasure to be here.
So I start with all of our guests on ILLUMENATE here with a big question about motivation. What's your why? Where do you find purpose and what drives you?
What's my why? So that's kind of a, I don't know, maybe an easy, maybe a complicated answer. My why is because I have always wanted to help people. I don't know where it came from. I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have, but I have just always had this burning desire inside of me to help people. I have been working in the pharmaceutical, clinical trial, biotech, medical device industry for about 30 years, and I love the work that we do. We're helping so many people. I've worked for a lot of companies. My wife and I grew up in New York. We lived just outside of Austin, Texas for 6 years. And now we live in Tampa. We've been here for almost 3 years. I'm currently working remote. Actually, my last 2 jobs, I've been working remote. Most of my emphasis has been on quality assurance, document control, systems and compliance, and not necessarily the research or the manufacturing part of it. There have been some times when I've been involved in that, but mostly on the quality end. I like to find the problems and hold people accountable and make sure that everything is done the way it's supposed to be. Before that, early on in life, I wanted to be a meteorologist. That didn't really work out. And something else that I really wanted to do, which probably would have helped people even more, is to be a teacher. I wanted to be a math teacher. I have just always had a natural gift with numbers. Can't explain it. I don't know where it came from, but I've also learned over the years, just stop asking questions and just embrace it.
Yeah.
If you're good at something, sometimes there's no explanation. And I've wanted to be a math teacher because I love helping other people learn. I really got a glimpse of that in one of my college courses. I think it was pre-calc. I was acing the class, sleeping through it basically, or not literally sleeping through it, but it was a breeze. I had 100 plus average the entire class, and a lot of my classmates were struggling. And by the time we got to the final, I was tutoring probably half the class.
Yeah.
And a few of the people then said, you should be a teacher. You should consider being a math teacher. And I was like, yeah, I think that's exactly right. Once I knew I wasn't going to be a meteorologist and I needed something else to pursue, then I said, yeah, maybe this is the way to go. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I think I got to Calc 1 was fine. Calc 2 was trouble. I took it twice. I got a C- and then a C, which I think a C is what you needed to move on. Calc 3 was a nightmare. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I wanted to teach junior high school math. I didn't want to teach, college level.
Right.
I want to teach like 8th grade.
There's a big difference in algebra and Calc 3.
Seriously. Yeah. But the problem is the New York State Board of Regents or Board of Education or whatever the requirements were required me to have all these classes. I'm like, what the hell do I need Calc 3 to teach 8th grade math? But New York State said I couldn't get through Calc 3, so I'm not going to be a math teacher. So, all right, fine. By that point, by the point I knew that I wasn't going to be a math teacher, I was already probably 6 or 7 years into this career, into the pharma career. And again, I loved the work we were doing, and it was fulfilling in a lot of ways. When the time came to do this podcast, it was actually last year, 2024. January 1st, I found myself unemployed for the first time probably ever since I started working. I was on a 2-year contract, which ended on December 31st, 2023. And I knew kind of about 2 months in advance that it was likely the contract was going to end. I was looking for something else. I didn't have anything directly lined up. And so I started the year unemployed. And aside from putting out all the resumes and talking with recruiters, trying to find my next job, that part was constant. That was a daily mission. But at a certain point, I don't know, mid end of January, probably the second half of January, once I've sent out a million resumes, once I've had time to do all the projects around the house and all the honeydew list, I think is what everybody calls it, and had a little bit of time to just think, all right, what do I want? Is there something I want to do? I mean, I've got time for the first time ever.
Right. Yeah.
Usually I'm so busy working. And a friend of mine was actually getting ready to start a podcast of her own, a completely unrelated topic to mine. But just through conversation, she said, you should do a podcast. Like, what am I going to talk about? Who wants to listen to me? And something that I also hated was the idea of public speaking. Being in front of a microphone, being in front of a big crowd, I hated the idea. I also, for my entire life, hated the sound of my voice recorded. I don't know why. Apparently,
most people do. Most people do.
Apparently, most people do, as I've been learning. I couldn't get over it. And so I had met a lady. Well, I started following a lady named Christina Driscoll on Facebook early last year and was following her podcast. And then at some point, I want to say mid-late February, she put up a post about teaching a class for starting a podcast. And so she and I had a conversation offline, and I was worried about money because I wasn't working at this point. The money that it would taken to do the class, to start the podcast, to buy the equipment and everything. And she really convinced me. By that point, I had decided that if I was going to do a podcast, it was going to be about grief. I knew what I went through when I lost my dad. We had a very complicated relationship, which I won't go too much into. If anybody wants, please go listen to Our Dead Dad's podcast. My whole story is episode 1. After that, we get into it with everybody else. But I told her that I wanted to help other people process their grief. I wanted to give people a platform to just talk about grief, because so many people don't talk about it because they think that nobody wants to hear it, or it's something that they don't have a platform for. They don't have an outlet. They're burdening somebody else by feeding their crap to another person.
Right.
Like, why does somebody want to deal with my problems? I can't put that on somebody else. That's what a lot of people think. So I decided I wanted to create a platform where it was a safe space to talk about whatever you want. Any kind of grief. We're not just talking about parents. We're talking about siblings, children, spouses, losing spouses to divorce, losing jobs, losing pets, losing homes, losing life savings. All forms of loss need and deserve to be grieved. And I know that that's a big topic out there. I mean, at this point, I've interviewed people in 7 different countries, and it's all the same. We all deal with grief the same, which is largely we don't deal with it.
Yeah.
So
just pack it down inside.
Just pack it down.
Yeah.
Pack it away. Don't talk about it. And I'll get more into that later about how we were raised not to talk about it. But I knew that I wanted to create a platform where people could talk about it. And then I realized this is my, I guess, my purpose. This is how I'm going to help people. And I also knew that it was going to take a long time to grow a podcast into any kind of a sizable following, but I had to start somewhere. If you don't start at step 1, you're not going to get anywhere. And so I did. I started doing interviews. I started initially having conversations specifically about dads, and we'll get into a little bit later about how Our Dead Dads came about. But it quickly evolved into conversations about all kinds of grief. And at this point, as of when you and I are recording this, tomorrow, March 11th, is the release of episode 40. And I cannot believe I'm already 40 episodes into this. I've already recorded probably another 15 or so. And the feedback that I get with how necessary this is, with how needed something like this is, how happy everybody is that I am doing this, that I'm creating this platform. That's everything. That's my why.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what drives me.
Yeah, and congratulations on getting to 40. I think I read
Thank
somewhere
you.
not too long ago that the average podcast doesn't make it to episode 10.
I read that too.
So you've 4x that already. So
Yes.
you're well along the way to being really successful. And I think it's, getting over that initial hump and putting the work in is a real testament to your perseverance there.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that.
Talking about grief,
Yeah.
that's something that's tough for people to do. How have you found it's been getting guests to talk about that, and especially men? This podcast is focused on men and men's issues. How has that been for you?
It's been a lot easier than I thought it would be. It's not always easy, but once people start the conversation, they're willing to open up. Something that I do that I know not all podcasters do is I have intro calls with everybody. Now that comes from a previous life that I had on Long Island when we were both on Long Island. Before I was ever a podcaster, my side business was wedding photography. Photography started as a hobby and it turned into a business, and I did that for 12 years. I always met with the couples to meet them so they were comfortable with me. We did engagement shoots. We talked about what they wanted at their wedding. I did everything I could to help them be at ease, to feel comfortable knowing that when I was there with them on the most important day of their lives, they didn't, of all the things they were going to have to worry about, they weren't going to have to worry about me. And that went a long way with making them feel better. And so that is why I do intro calls, because I want people to feel comfortable with me. I want people to understand what we're going to talk about. Like, we don't go into crazy granular details in the intro calls, but we do a high level. We talk about their grief journey, regardless of who or what the loss that they're going to discuss is. We talk about if there's anything that's off limits, because sometimes people have certain details that they don't want to talk about,
right,
or part of their stories involve family members that are still alive and they may not want to say anything, and it gets back to certain family members, or they may have family members that they are not on good terms with that they still don't want it to get back to those family members. So they're trying to kind of keep things a little bit controlled. And that's fine. I totally respect that. And there's some people that are like, I don't really care. I'm going to talk about everything. Nothing's off limits. If they don't like it, too bad. So
yeah,
it's whatever they want to talk about.
But it's good. When you're dealing with that sensitive of a topic, it's good to sort of know where the boundaries are.
Yeah, because it's not an easy thing to discuss. I want to say especially for men, but I've learned that women also have a difficult time talking about it. And I think a big part of being in a podcast format is somebody could come to me and have the initial thought of, well, who is this guy and why do I want to tell him some of my deepest, darkest secrets? And it's because it's grief, and we all deal with grief. Of all the things on this planet that we love talking about, religion, politics, sports, fast cars, and name probably a dozen other topics, there's a lot of people that it can relate to those topics. There are a lot of people that those topics resonate with, and there are plenty of people that they don't. We all have grief in common. Every single one of us. Probably about the only people that don't grieve are sociopaths, but we're not even going to get into them.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
that's a very small portion of our population.
For the rest of us, normal, semi-normal people, we grieve. Yes. And there are about 8 billion people on this planet. So in theory, I have a massive potential audience. Reaching them and getting them to be part of it is a different story, because grief is not a sexy topic. Grief is not something that people feel comfortable talking about. It's not something that they enjoy talking about. And so what I'm trying to do is either push or shove, if need be, when you come onto my podcast, out of your comfort zone and talk about it.
Yeah.
Because there are hard things that we have to deal with in life. And
when you first reached out to me about being on this podcast, I was like, oh, I'm going to go check out this podcast. And it was, I can't remember which episode it was, but it was a good friend of yours talking about losing his dad. And I was listening to it while I was driving. I had a 2-hour drive. And so I put it on and listened to it. And I remember like just getting so deep into the conversation and really feeling like I knew the two of you.
I think
Um,
it was Eric, episode 28.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And it was, but at the end of it, I'm like, oh, that was heavy. Like it was,
Yeah.
so it's not something that you sort of just casually listen to. You sort of have
Oh,
to
no. It's an
dedicate,
investment.
you have to dedicate yourself and invest some time in it and be there and be present. And in some ways, I almost
Yes.
felt like I needed to be more present with it because of the subject matter, right? There was like a
Yes.
respect issue in listening to
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that.
Anything else about your journey that you want to share before we dive into some of our other questions that I've got for you?
No, I mean, I think that's
Okay.
that's pretty much how the podcast came along. I mean, I prior to that, I don't have radio or TV or podcasting experience. This podcast was something that I kind of whipped up and I dreamed up a little over a year ago. And I will say something with me is when I kind of get my mind into something and I really get some steam behind it, then I'll become pretty passionate about it, and I'm gonna take it as far as I can and try to make it work no matter what. But this, I didn't have to try. And I'm not saying that I have millions of listeners. I don't. But if anybody out there knows a way to get me millions of listeners, by all means, send them my way. When I say I didn't have to try, I mean I this is a lot of work. But I also have found that this is not nearly as hard in some ways to do as I thought it was going to be. It's hard, it's intense to hear the stories that I hear. It is not hard for me personally to be there to give that person a platform, to give that person a chance and to hold space with them in the conversation because people are telling their stories and by default I am now part of their grief journey.
Yes.
And that is not something I take lightly. That is something that I consider to truly be an honor. And I say that, and I hope I say that in every episode. I've probably missed a few, but it is something that I am honored to be a part of because a grief journey is a very individual thing. It is a very special thing. It's a very sacred thing. It's not something that we want all of the world necessarily to be part of. And when somebody's willing to do that, especially when they realize what my mission is, what my goal and my greater good is, they're thrilled to do it. And I'm thrilled to have them.
I completely agree with you. I think this is episode 13 for me. And there's a reverence that I have for these conversations now that I didn't exactly know that I was going to have when I started
Mhm.
this.
Sure.
And just that the idea that you all are coming here and you are sharing your story with me. And some of these stories are really difficult to tell. And some of the questions that I ask, require kind of a depth of introspection that a lot of people aren't willing to sort of share even with the people that they're closest with, and they're sharing that with me and then
Right.
sharing it with the world through me. I really take this seriously as a result of that, so I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that's been a big thought process that I've had is like if they're not willing to necessarily discuss this with their closest family or their closest friends, why me? I mean, I have had
Yeah.
several people who have come onto this podcast. My friend Eric, who you listened to, and several other friends, and several people who I have not physically met, who have come on and told their story publicly for the very first time. There was one lady, her name is Mel Mosier. I can't remember what episode number hers was, somewhere around 20. I mean, if you look through the episodes, she's the only one with bright red hair, and she's a fireball. She's amazing. I loved that interview and actually interviewed on her podcast as well. She has been helping people for 5 years in similar situations to what she's gone through. And she saw my podcast. I think we met through Facebook or through a mutual friend. And she said, I've got a story and I've never told it. And I want your podcast to be the platform where I finally tell it. I was like, you
Yeah.
sure? And she's like, absolutely. I'm like, bring it on. Let's do it.
That's
And
amazing.
it was a long conversation. It was very emotional for her, but she was so happy that she did it.
Yeah, there's something about the podcast format, and I can't quite put my finger on it yet. I think part of it for me is the second I put these headphones on, I create this connection with the other person.
Yes.
There's an intimacy to like hearing their voice that close to you
Yes.
that I really do think creates some sort of like I don't want to call it symbiosis between the two people, but there's a level of intimacy that really I think does open people up. And I know not everyone wears the headphones, but there's
Sure.
something about it, even in a virtual platform like we're using. There's a connection there that I don't know that I feel that particular type of connection in any other medium.
Right. Yeah, and whether it's, you say the headphones, like you and I are both wearing
Yeah.
headphones, and I know other podcasters don't. They have their setup or they have speakers or whatever they use, and that's fine. Sometimes it's instead of headphones, it's when the picture comes up on the camera, on the monitor, and that's when everything starts. And I agree. As soon as
Yeah.
the headphones go on, as soon as the person comes up on my screen, yeah, we are now bonded. We have formed a connection. And like I said before, with all of my guests, I am now part of their story and they're part of mine. And that's pretty special. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You can, I guess, find that with anybody that you meet in person. But look, we also live in the technology age. We live in the age of instant gratification, and human connection in person is getting harder and harder to meaningfully come by. And if this is what it takes, then this is what it takes. I mean, again, if I had to do this strictly based on people that live in Tampa, I don't know if I could. I don't know if I'd be able to find enough people. The
Yeah.
internet is great for that I've been able to interview
Yes.
people all over this country and in 6 other countries. And I'm so grateful for that.
So one of the themes that runs through this podcast is this idea of personal growth.
Yes.
And as a part of growth, one of the things that I think realized as I started this podcast, but it's been confirmed through all of the conversations that I've had, is growth almost always requires throwing something away.
Right.
And and maybe it's loss, maybe it's intentional throwing something away, maybe it's something that you had taken from you, but it requires a losing of some kind, and I've called it deconstruction. So it may be something that you learned early in life and that you have to sort of let go of in order to reach that new version of yourself. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, are there things that you've had to deconstruct that were sort of given to you foundationally earlier in life?
I had to deconstruct the notion that grief doesn't need to be discussed or doesn't need to be processed. I mean, growing up, and I say we, whether you want to say within my family, my siblings, my cousins, boys in general. I mean, I'm born in 1975, so I grew up in the early mid 80s. We were basically taught that we don't need to talk about this. There's no need to. Get past it, move forward, rub some dirt on it, get over it. That couldn't be further from the truth. We have been programmed by society and by those who raised us or had a hand in raising us that the past is the past. And when something is over, especially when we lose someone or something, it is time to turn the page. And remember, grief is not just about when somebody dies. It is probably the most amount of time that we will spend in the world of grief. But on my show, as I said earlier, we discuss all forms of grief: losing parents, siblings, children, spouses, marriages, jobs, pets, everything. They're all losses. They're all significant. They're all meaningful, and they all deserve to be grieved. And many times they need to be grieved. And we frequently don't realize how much they need to be grieved. Now, that period of grief varies by event and subject, but we're doing ourselves a disservice if we don't allow ourselves to process grief. Most people think that getting grief, or getting over grief rather, is equal to moving on. And it's not about moving on. It's about moving forward. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
You can't tiptoe around grief. You can't ignore it or escape it.
You have to move
The only
through
way
it.
out of
Yeah.
Exactly. The only way out of grief, the only way that you can move past grief, if that's what you want to say, is to move through it.
Yeah.
There, A to B is generally the shortest distance between 2 points. Like if it's a straight line, grief's not a straight line. It's all zigzag and it looks like a big pot of spaghetti. The only way that our grief journey ends is when we end. And then it's somebody else's problem. But not trying to be too morbid.
You're starting somebody else's grief journey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're beginning. Yeah. When you're ending yours, you're starting somebody else's grief journey.
Yeah. So how did you work through that? Like how, if you were raised that way, and I have to sort of shout out, you mentioned Long Island earlier.
Yes.
And like I grew up in Connecticut, just across the Sound. So nice. 1971. So we're fellow Gen Xers and East Coasters. But how did you, what was the point of realization you were like, oh, I need to do this differently to be healthy?
Probably the first realization that I had was after my dad died. So he died in May of 2021. And my dad and I had a very complicated relationship. I was the oldest of his children, the oldest of his 7 children. He was married and divorced 5 times. He was a very complicated man. My 3 brothers and I, there are 4 boys, 3 girls. My 3 brothers and I talk all the time about how we have all had very different relationships with him, even though same man, same father, but we all had different relationships with him. We all processed his death differently. And when he died, I really believed that I was fine. I kind of made a deal with myself a long time ago that I was going to put up with my dad's crap for as long as he was going to dish it out, because he just didn't know any better. And I knew that I would always be the bigger person. I realized I needed to be, especially after his 5th and final divorce, when he could no longer take care of himself by himself. And he needed us. And he honestly needed us more than we needed him. But he did need us. So we did what we had to do. And when he died, my initial feeling that Saturday morning at 5:30 a.m. in my living room in Texas, having the conversation with the nurse from the nursing home, the long-term care facility that he was in, after we hung up the phone, my first feeling was relief. And that was in 2 ways. The first way was I was relieved that his physical suffering was over, and he suffered a lot. Now, granted, it was mostly self-inflicted because he just didn't bother taking care of himself. But he went through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering for a very long time, and I was truly relieved that that was over. I was also relieved that all of the crap that he put me through, my brothers, my sisters, his ex-wives, everybody pretty much that ever came into his life, it was finally over. It was done. We were able to start moving forward. We flew up to Texas. We flew up to New York. We had the funeral, came back, went back to work. And largely, I thought I was fine for probably 3 or 4 months. And then I realized, with the help of my wife, that I was not fine, because I was starting to become irritable. I was starting to snap at people, snapping at her, snapping at my coworkers for no reason. Nobody did anything wrong. This was all stuff that I was holding inside, because I was starting to realize that I had a lot of unprocessed anger still toward him. And pretty much most of the conversations I ever had with him felt like they were one-way conversations, because he tried talking to the man, and if it wasn't what he wanted to hear, he wasn't going to listen.
Yeah.
And it was like talking to a brick wall, and it felt exactly the same way when he was dead. But at least it was different, because at least when he was still alive, if I really wanted to say something to him, I could say something to him. Now he's gone. There's nothing I can do. I have no recourse to talk to him. And I was angry about that. I was angry that there were things left not dealt with. I wasn't upset, and I wasn't sad, and I wasn't devastated that he was gone. I never had that. We just didn't have that kind of relationship. I was angry because of the kind of person he was. And my wife picked up on it at some point, probably a few points. And one night she said, "You need to talk to somebody." And I knew that I knew she didn't mean her. I knew she meant a therapist.
Yeah.
And
our spouses can only do so much for us when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's not fair to make them do.
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
yeah.
It wasn't fair for me to take my anger and my frustration out on her either. Again, I wasn't trying. I didn't realize I was doing it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's probably the greatest piece of advice she's ever given me is that I need to talk to somebody, because I was starting to go down. I was at the very beginning of going down a road where I was going to become a very unpleasant person to be around. And so I did. I got into therapy and spoke. This was 2021, so it was still COVID and everything was virtual, but I spoke weekly with an amazing therapist. We talked about everything having to do with our relationship and then some. We did it for 6 months. And by the end of it, I, for the first time, honestly, was good. I was able to forgive myself for being so angry. I was able to forgive him for being who he was. I was able to forgive him for not being who we know that he could and should have been. And I was able to release the anger. That was a huge wake-up call. And that's when I knew that I am far from the only person that goes through that. And I need to help people. I need to work with people. I need to find a way. I've said it many times on this show. I'm not a therapist. I'm not trying to cure people. I didn't go to college for this. I'm working off of my real life experiences and your real life experience. And by you, I mean the person who's coming onto my show. We're talking about our life experiences and everything we've learned along the way. We're not talking about somebody who's got a bunch of degrees hanging up on the back of the wall and I've got a bunch of letters after my name. That's not me. I'm just a person who has this fire inside of me to help people.
You're helping people tell their story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my therapist got that out of me. And I'm so grateful that she did. I didn't realize how badly I needed to have that 6-month therapy journey.
I'm really glad
it changed me.
I'm really glad you got to that place of forgiveness. And I'm glad you said that word, because forgiveness, a lot of people think that forgiveness is a gift to the other person. But it's actually a gift to ourselves.
That's right.
It's the letting go of the anger or the frustration or the pain and saying it's no longer going to live inside me.
Exactly. You nailed it. Forgiveness is not about, oh, you know what? It's really okay. I get you were a dick and you just you couldn't help it. It's okay, Dad. I hope you can rest peacefully. No, it's not that. Oh. Because the man was a jerk. The man had good qualities too, but none of us deserved the treatment that we got. Yeah. So the forgiveness is about me in this case. It is being able to put that in a place and, honest to God, letting it go, letting it just be out there. I'm not holding on to it. I have never, since therapy ended, I have not one day spent a day angry at him since.
I almost want to self-invite myself onto your podcast. I won't go too deep into it here, but I haven't talked to my father in almost 25 years and he's still living. Okay. But there's a really long story behind that. And I've never really sort of shared it publicly. So,
well, then consider that your open invite.
Yeah.
Anytime you're ready, we will start the conversation. I've talked to a couple people recently that are grieving relationships with a person who's not gone. So it's totally normal and it's totally acceptable. It's okay. Like you when you're dealing with crap with somebody that you are zero contact with, or even if you have contact, like limited contact, and you just absolutely hate it, it's the bane of your existence, you still need a way for that to get out. So 100%. Consider this your invite to our Dead Dads podcast.
Yeah, it's. I'll share one thing, and I think I don't know that I've necessarily grieve the loss of him, but when I became a dad, like that became really obvious to me. And I've been a dad for 22 years now. It became really obvious to me that the idea of fatherhood was absent in my life because I now had something, but I had nothing to relate it to. And so yeah, we'll do that in the future. You talked about kind of coming to terms with your own grief and sort of learning how to get through that.
Yeah.
Everyone's working on something, or maybe should be working on something. So what are the personal development things that you're currently working on?
Communication. I am learning how to be a better and a more effective communicator. I wasn't communicating very well with my dad when he was alive. Our conversations were usually limited. Even when I saw him, we knew that there were certain things that we could talk about that weren't going to start a fight. We could talk about baseball. We could talk about weather. My love for weather comes from him. We could talk about movies until the end of time. We could talk about professional wrestling. And yes, I know that's going to be a trigger with plenty of your listeners. They're going to say, what the hell? What do you mean it's all fake? It's stayed. All right. First of all, it isn't fake. It's entertainment. And they're athletes and there are real injuries. And if you don't like it, then that's cool. You don't have to like it. But don't tell me it's fake just because it's scripted. You know what? You watch TV shows and you watch Netflix, that's scripted too. That's exactly what wrestling is, except you can't always tell. You can't always tell when actual injuries are going to happen, even if the outcome has been predetermined.
Yeah.
So we had those things and I enjoyed, but it wasn't for probably, I don't know, the last 10 to 15 years of his life. It wasn't meaningful conversation. We didn't have a lot of conversations about things that really mattered. There were a few times, I will say, when he would express a lot of regret for things that he didn't do for us or what he did to my mom, because he, without getting into a lot of details, I mean, at least 3 of his marriages ended because he stepped out. Again, great guy. My mom was one of them. He just, I don't know. He did what he wanted to do and he didn't really care about anybody else's opinion and he didn't have any accountability. So there are certain things we didn't talk about because it was going to start fights. Politics, we could have created World War III by ourselves over politics. Between that and just how much of a bigot and a racist he was, which is why we didn't talk about those things.
Yeah.
What else? Overcoming fear is a big one. Fear of having conversations, fear of putting myself out there, especially with this podcast. I was terrified. We spoke a little bit earlier about Christina Driscoll, the lady that got me into this with taking the class, starting a podcast. Our very first assignment on week number 1. Now, we met once a week by Zoom, and we had assignments every week. My very first assignment was to take my phone, record a 1 minute, with voice notes or whatever that voice recording app is on your phone, record a 1 minute piece about what I wanted to do with the podcast, what the podcast was going to be about. It took me a half an hour to do that because I kept stumbling over my words and I kept losing my space and I kept just losing track and I was getting all flustered. I was sweating bullets. And then at some point I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? What do you like? Nobody's ever going to hear this.
Yeah. Just
suck it up and just do it. And I finally did. And then I thought we were going to be playing these for Christina and it turned out we weren't. And I'm like, I stressed about all of that for nothing.
Yeah.
And so, all right, fine. I overcame. That was my first, I guess, little opportunity to overcome fear relating to the podcast. And one of my favorite quotes is, everything that you want in life is on the other side of fear. And that couldn't be more true for all of us, for just about anything. If there is something that you want in life, go after it. If you need $1 billion to do it, then all right. If you don't have $1 billion, maybe don't do it. Find something else that you want to do. Find something else that you're passionate about. But overcoming fear is huge. What's another one? Confidence. Finding my personal confidence. I didn't have any confidence in myself to do this initially. I talked about hating, despising the sound of my own voice. And that's something that I got over really quickly because when I have to not only record the interviews, but I have to edit them, I'm hearing myself all the time. And so the first couple of weeks, I was like, I can't stand my own voice. And eventually at some point it just went away. There was a switch that just flipped. and I didn't worry about it anymore. And then I could focus on not necessarily the things that held me back, but just building my confidence, being a better interviewer, being a better storyteller. Because when I'm talking to somebody like you, I'm telling a story, I'm telling part of my journey. And if I'm not interesting, then you're not going to enjoy the interview and your listeners aren't going to enjoy the interview. So, at least from that respect,
Yeah.
I am going to try to tell a good story. And I don't mean story as in just a tale. Like, this is the truth. Everything that I'm talking about is the truth, but it still has to be interesting to hear.
Right. There's a way to deliver it.
Absolutely. There's definitely a way to deliver it. And if there's anything else, I think it's being proud of what I've accomplished, having pride in myself, which was something that was really hard for a long time, because my dad was one of those people that we've all heard the stories, but if I brought home a test with a 98 on it, he's the guy that would say, what happened to the other 2 points? Nothing was ever good enough. And for a long time, I couldn't find enough pride in things. I couldn't be proud because I knew that he was always going to give me crap about something.
Yeah.
Even when there was nothing to give crap about, he was going to find something to nitpick and to pick apart and to just be an ass about. And since starting this podcast, all of those things are, I don't want to sound cocky or arrogant, but honestly, all those things are overwhelming in ways that I never imagined they would be.
Yeah. And it's just the testament that sometimes you just have to like fight past that fear and stretch yourself. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I had the same notion about my voice. And like, I don't have a great radio voice. And, but now after editing it so much, I almost prefer the sound of my recorded voice than I do to the voice that I normally hear myself.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it has definitely happened.
But isn't it weird how those things kind of come full circle like that?
Yeah.
I'm with you. When I listen to the interviews when I'm editing them, I mean, I don't mind. And in fact, sometimes I almost prefer listening to the edited version of it, because like what I'm hearing is like, now I'm less inclined to want to hear my own voice just when I'm talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some people people joke about it. Oh, he just talks because he loves the sound of his own voice. It's not me. It's never been me.
Yeah.
But I think all those. I hope that was the answer that you're looking for.
That's great. So you mentioned that you've used therapy as a way for support. You mentioned the woman who helped you sort of understand how to get started with podcasts and everything. Who else do you rely on for support, and how do you create community for yourself?
I rely on a lot of people. Probably first and foremost is my wife. She is my best friend. She is my partner in life, in marriage, in everything. We are each other's better halves. We are each other's everything. We have been married for going on 19 years. We've known each other for a little bit more than 19 years. I say she is, I mean, I obviously have family, but she is my family as well. I've talked about this on my show. We tried having kids for years and it didn't happen, and that's okay. We have a cat, and what a lump. She's such a beast. She's sitting here and she's asleep, and she's doing a face plant right now into the chair, which is one of her like famous positions. I love it. We have, we call our little family here with the two of us and the cat, we call it our 2.1 because Maxie, my cat, she's wee. She's just a cat. She's just 10 pounds. And we are, well, at least I am significantly more than 10 pounds. So we rounded it up and we gave her like 0.1 of a person. It's just one of our little inside jokes. Yeah. But that's our 2.1. And I rely on my family, my immediate family here and the rest of my outside family for support. I rely on my podcast community, because without them, the community that I have gained, the community that I am building, the community that has welcomed me into it, especially the grief community, again, I wouldn't be here doing this without all of them.
Yeah. So what role does male friendship play in your life? I've gotten a variety of different answers from the guests that I've had on here about, how do men play that role? When I listened to the conversation that you had with Eric, and you guys seem to be relatively close. But what is that role in your life?
So yeah, Eric is a great guy. I've known him since I want to say also sometime in junior high school, 7th, 8th, ninth grade, somewhere around there. He's amazing, and I value all of my friendships, especially the long term ones. Something that's very important that we haven't really talked about yet is the foundation of this podcast is a group of guys that I'm part of. I have 3 younger brothers, as I've mentioned before, and I have 3 very close friends that I've known since probably about 7th grade. Like I've known these guys 37, 38 years. I mean, they're not my friends. They're my brothers, all 3 of them. And I say that about a lot of guy friends that I have. I look to them for grounding, for camaraderie, for accountability, and of course, the endless amount of crap that we give each other. But those first 3
Yes.
things are the most important things. We all hold each other accountable. We all ground each other.
What does that accountability look like?
Talking to each other, hearing what we all need to say, hearing each other's perspective on anything that we're going through, and not giving ourselves the opportunity to not hold ourselves accountable. We talk about a lot of things. We talk about things that are going on within our own homes. We talk about our own perspectives on real life topics or politics or whatever. We don't all agree on politics, but I will say one of my friends, I will not mention which one of them, has some very skewed views of the world and of politics. And he's just like, whatever the hell, what the hell, doesn't matter. It's all, it's all going to hell in a handbasket anyway. And we'll talk about certain things and he just rambles. And I really think it's because he doesn't want to talk about it because he's not comfortable.
Yeah.
But then sometimes he'll say things that are just like, are you listening to yourself? What are you talking about? And I think sometimes he's just saying things to just fill space, to just say words. And I've told him at times, like, I'd rather hear you say nothing than say that. So if you're going to have this conversation with me, then put all the BS aside and let's have an honest conversation for 5 minutes. Like, tell me what's really on your mind. Don't give me some crap answer that you like. I'm not somebody that has known you for 3 hours. I'm somebody that's known you almost your entire life. So you can't fool me. If you want to talk, let's talk. And we do. And when we know that we don't have to agree with each other all the time. When sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It's not about agreeing. It's just about listening and hearing each other. But also at the same time, when any of us say things that are so outlandish and so far-fetched and absurd, we're going to call each other out on them. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. And none of us have any problem doing it. Some of us have a problem hearing it, but if I'm saying something that is just a joke when everybody else is trying to be serious, then yeah, I kind of want people to hold me accountable. I want to be held accountable because it will make me be a better person.
And that's, I think, really critical in today's world. That I think if you spend any amount of time on social media nowadays, you see a lot of men are awful, men are awful, men are awful. And I think in some ways that's at least slightly deserved. And however, one of the
women are not perfect,
right? Absolutely, right. We're humans, right?
That's right.
We're fallible. We do awful things.
Yeah. We're all incredible, and we all are jerks,
right? But I think that some of that frustration stems from the fact that men don't do a great job of calling each other out when they are being crappy humans.
Yes,
and so does that? It sounds like that happens in your group of friends. Of like, it's like, dude, you're being a jerk here. You're like wrong about this. You need to improve here. So let's jump into our lightning round.
I love the lightning round.
We've got 11 questions.
All right, let's have
kind of quick answers.
Okay.
Number 1, what are your top 3 values?
Authenticity, being true to myself, being true in what I tell my audience, how I present it, and what I'm trying to do with this podcast. Empathy is a big one, creating a space for people to share their grief and pain and doing it in a way that is free of judgment from myself and hopefully from the community. I mean, look, we've all been through hell and back. Grief's not a pissing contest. It's not a comparison, whether it's grief on the show or whatever. Like, I want everybody to feel like they have an open seat in this community, doing it without judging anybody. Because unless you've walked down the road with a person, you don't know what they've been through. Hope. Everybody should have some hope. It's what keeps almost all of us moving forward. Hoping that we can improve, hoping that we can change, hoping that we can grow.
Fantastic. I think you should put "Grief is not a pissing contest" on a t-shirt. That would be a great t-shirt. Who is one role model you've had in your life?
A couple that I had early on, I mean, I guess they still are. My mom's parents, my grandparents, they were married for just short of 70 years. And wow. I always wanted to have that kind of a marriage. I always wanted to be as happy as they were. And I mean, I don't know that I'm going to make it to 70 years because when Kim and I met, I was 30 and she was 33. So, if we get to 100, both of us, then, we'll get close. But yeah, I think they were definitely one of my first role models, just because they had a big hand in raising us and tried to always make family a priority. So yeah, I would say, excellent. Again, I mean, so many, but they kind of stick out.
Who do you hope you are a role model for?
Everybody who needs one. I hope that I do live my life, and I hope that I have lived my life in a way that if somebody were to come across my podcast randomly, if somebody wanted to have a conversation randomly, or if somebody really wanted to get to know me or has known me, I hope, aside from all the sarcasm and dark humor and the fun that we love to have, I really hope that I could be the kind of person that somebody would say, you're a role model.
What's the one way you make the world a better place?
I'm going to go with providing space for anyone who feels like they don't have a place to speak or a person to talk to or somebody who will listen to them. I am striving to be that for everybody. That's a lot of the change that I am trying to create. My tagline on my podcast, I say at the end of every episode, is we're changing the world one damaged soul at a time. That is, it's not just a tagline. It is exactly what I am trying to do.
What's the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
Well, the fact that I can't lose weight nearly as easy as I want to is, a side conversation for probably another time, but it's something I've always struggled with, but it's fine. Knowing that I can't change the world, kind of to piggyback off of the last answer, knowing I can't change the world as quickly as I want to. Again, this is not a sexy topic. It's not an ideal topic. Getting people on board rather, to talk about this, to be part of this community isn't easy. It's not as easy as it probably is for all of the podcasts that, again, talk about sports or politics or religion or whatever topics that are just fun topics. I just want to help everybody. And I know me, I want to do it. I'm playing the long game right now. I will do this for as long as I have to.
For almost all of us, the only way to help, one person at a time.
One person at a time. That's why I say changing the world one damaged soul at a time.
So what's your favorite emotion?
That's easy. Love.
What's your least favorite emotion?
Fear.
What brings you the most joy in life?
My wife, my cat, the work I'm doing, honestly, for both jobs, for my full-time job and for this podcast. Sitting out in my backyard with a drink on Friday after work, traveling, spending time with my family, all things that are really important to me and bring a lot of joy to me.
What makes you most proud of yourself?
Holding true to my values, wanting something, going after it, getting it. Even if I have to start from square one, like I did with this podcast, I didn't have the first clue what I was doing when I got into this. Little example I'll give, the episode that's coming out tomorrow. It is episode 40. It is well, I guess by this point it's okay to talk about it
Yeah.
because by the time this drops,
Yeah.
episode 40 will have already dropped. I interviewed a man by the name of Robbie Parker. He is one of the many people who lost a child at the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in 2012.
How awful.
He and his wife. I'm sorry.
I said, how awful.
It was. Yeah. It was gut wrenching to have that conversation, to hear everything that he described. But again, this is why I do it, because I want to be part of their stories.
Yeah.
I have to be if I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I edited the interview. I finished it, and it's already uploaded and everything. And not always, but sometimes with certain interviews, I will listen to them again listen to them entirely before they drop, whether it's just because I want to make sure everything's good or whatever, or just because I want to listen to it. In the last couple of days, re-listened to that entire interview, and I don't know. I mean, the amount of pride that I have in what I'm doing, and just basically saying to myself, I absolutely nailed it with this interview. This was the hardest interview that I have had to do so far. And if I do 1,000 interviews, it will probably be one of the hardest interviews I will ever do. And I'm just trying to absorb that I had no clue what I was doing when I started. And now I'm 40 episodes, but I'm probably closer to 55 or 60 interviews interviews that I haven't released yet. And I know that I'm getting so much better. I know that I've come such a long way in such a short time, in less than a year of doing this. And that gives me a lot of pride, knowing that I'm doing what I want to do. I'm helping people. Yeah. I don't have to be helping a million people, but I am helping people. And I am damn proud of that.
Where can you feel the most yourself?
When I'm having a conversation with somebody that I love. And whether it's my wife, my siblings, my friends, my coworkers. Sometimes my coworkers have become family too.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of coworkers that I've become really tight with. Many who I no longer work with and haven't worked with for years, but I'm still really close with. Just to be able to have, whether fun, casual, pointless banter conversation, or have significant, meaningful, productive conversation. And also when I'm working on something that I'm passionate about. When I am doing something that I am passionate about, I'm kind of at my best.
Both of those things are flow states of being in good conversation with people you love and doing something you're passionate about. It's, we feel our best when we're in those flow states.
Definitely.
Yeah. So one last question to wrap up our conversation today. What's the one thing you hope people take away from this episode?
Everything you say, everything you think, everything you feel matters. It's relevant. The grief that you have felt, the grief that you are feeling, or the grief that you will one day feel, it is all relevant. It is all important. And you should not run from it. You should deal with it head on when you're ready, because you're not going to necessarily be ready right when it hits, especially if you are faced with something that comes out of the blue, that comes unexpected. You lose somebody to a car accident, or I don't know, a massive heart attack or anything, just something completely unexpected. That's a whole different phase of grief that a lot of people nobody's prepared for it. But when you find yourself dealing with grief, give yourself a break and allow yourself the space that you need to be able to process it. As I said earlier, you can't go around it. You have to go through it. When the grief happens, embrace it, celebrate it, honor it. Let it walk side by side with you. Don't go with the mentality of the people who raised me and you and everybody our age, saying, we don't talk about it. That's not the way. We are all like pressure cookers. Think about, what does a pressure cooker do? You close it up and it builds and builds. You eventually got to let out a little bit of that steam. And the same way with us, sometimes we have to let off a little bit of steam. If you don't, and that pressure builds up enough, boom, it's going to explode.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that I had somebody like my wife to point that out to me at a point when I couldn't realize it. I couldn't realize that I was snapping at her. I was so just focused. I had tunnel vision. I was so pissed off at my father for being the miserable bastard that he was for most of his life. And all I was angry at him for not being around to be a better person. I was just so angry at him for so many things. I couldn't get out of my own way. I couldn't see through that anger to see what I was doing to other people. And I had that person who helped me through it, who very quickly it clicked, and I was like, yeah, you're right. I need to fix this. I need to figure this out. And it's not that she wasn't going to be there and be supportive with me. She was 100%. But try to recognize before it gets to that point. And if you don't recognize it before it gets to that point, if somebody points it out to you, don't discount what they're saying. Listen to them, because they're trying to help. The same way that hopefully you will be there to help somebody else in their time of need.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful way to end. Thank you, Nick, for being a guest on the show. I'm going to end with the way I end every one of these episodes, is to just, encourage you to keep up the hard work.
I definitely will. Thank you, Chris. It has been an honor and a pleasure to be here, to finally get to meet you. And I know that our conversation after this will continue for hopefully a long time.
Excellent.
And I look forward to all of it.
You can learn more about Illuminate at illuminate.substack.com. We are also streaming on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you at the next episode of Illuminate.